Hi, I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show news update. Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2026, and these are the top stories of the day.
United will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
This is not about destroying the Iranian nuclear program. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister have made it very clear. This is about regime change in Iran.
Plus, we're also going to talk about an unbelievable deal that quietly got written up in late February between the government of Canada and the Musqueam tribe that basically involves giving away the city of Vancouver. It's really unbelievable. And an MLA out in British Columbia calls for the end of the Human Rights Tribunal out in British Columbia. Today's episode, folks, is brought to you by Silver Gold Bull, but more on them a little bit later. Right, folks, it is such a busy news day. We have so much to get to. And I wanted to share a personal anecdote from you from the weekend. So Saturday was my son's birthday party. We had tons of people over. We had a nice lunch party. The theme was Lego. So there were like kids all over the place doing like little Lego stations and building. It was really, really fun. And my husband's brother was also visiting with his wife. Obviously, my husband is from Iran originally. His family fled the Islamic regime in the 90s, and him and his brother came and lived, grew up in Canada and they're Canadian. And really like unbelievable moment, like finding out the birthday party's winding down, and we kind of like, look at our phones. We hadn't looked at our phones throughout the birthday party, and the news had just come in that the regime was basically gone, that President Trump, in a joint action assault operation Epic Fury, had taken out the entire war cabinet, had taken out the entire regime. And let me just tell you, like watching, these two brothers find out the news and share it in the family chat, and the absolute like joy and excitement and relief that I saw on it was, I will never forget that moment in my entire life. I will never forget Saturday. It was just such an unbelievable day. And for them, right, watching the oppressive regime that destroyed their country, that destroyed their family, that forced the family to be displaced and move to Canada, like unbelievable, just the relief of seeing that gone. So, from my perspective, being in a house with Persians and seeing what happened, it was just pure joy and relief and gratitude towards President Trump and the Americans for actually doing this. This is something that people have been talking about and wanting to have happen for 45 years now. One of the absolute worst countries and governments that has ever existed, like dictator, like we're talking about like, the 20th century dictators, like on that level with like some of the worst dictators in the world. That's how they feel about that regime in Iran. So seeing what happened is just like unbelievable to watch. We're sort of all glued to our phones and to the TV for the rest of the afternoon. So we're going to get to some of that right now. I'm going to read from Juno News' article on this because I thought it was really, really well done. Celebrations break out in Tehran after Khamenei, killed by U.S.-Israeli airstrikes. Islamic dictator and Iran Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed in a targeted U.S.-Israeli strike early Saturday, according to Trump, and confirmed by Iranian state media. So yes, they're all gone. They're all dead. And this doesn't mean it's over, right? This is not like an Iraq boots on the ground type invasion situation. This is like an air bombing campaign. President Trump said over the weekend that it's going to be 4 weeks, and that the goal is regime change. Really unbelievable stuff. Let's play that clip from President Trump on Operation Epic Fury.
We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. This wretched and vile man had the blood of hundreds and even thousands of Americans on his hands and was responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people all across many countries.
And so much like in my household, much like the reaction from my husband and his brother, celebrations broke out across the Western world, across the West and across Canada. Unbelievable celebrations of Persians just celebrating. Like they couldn't help it. Even in Tehran, even in the city where it was happening, you saw women just like breaking out in dancing and celebration. Such a joyous moment for them. Interestingly, we're talking about all over Canada, we saw these people come out, with the original Persian flag. You can notice the difference between the Iranian flag and this Persian flag with the lion rather than the Ayatollah's symbol. So they have their own flag. And that was the flag that you saw out at these rallies. A lot of Israeli flags, a lot of American flags, a lot of people chanting Trump, thank you. I know it's like kind of cognitive dissonance for the leftist media because they're conditioning you that you must hate Trump and that he is racist and that everyone around the world hates him, especially, people of color and minorities and women. And then you actually see people from this community and they feel the exact opposite and they're thanking Trump and they're chanting, thank you, Trump. And we saw this in Ottawa, in Vancouver, in Toronto, in Montreal, in London, England, in Sydney, Australia, people all over the world celebrating the death of a very, very evil regime. Here's a bit of what that looks like.
Thank you, USA! Thank you, USA! Thank you, USA!
And on top of that, there was sad news that some American troops did die from counter strikes. Basically, Iran is now acting totally belligerent and launching all of their ballistic missiles in cities across the Middle East. One of them hit U.S. base in Kuwait. Sadly, 3 U.S. troops have been reported to be killed. And in response, what happens? The Persians showed up at the U.S. embassy with laying flowers, saying thank you, chanting USA, showing their eternal gratitude to President Trump and to the brave servicemen who are putting their lives at risk, and some of them laying down their life for this operation. Really unbelievable stuff. Here is what that looked like.
U.S. Army, thank you! U.S. Army, thank you! U.S. Army, thank you!
And so this is one of those interesting moments in Canadian politics where Prime Minister Mark Carney came out in support of this strike. I was actually kind of surprised, I have to admit. I was surprised to see this strong statement put out by Prime Minister Mark Carney and the government of Canada. I'll just read a little bit from it. He writes, "Canada supports the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. The government of Canada urges the protection of all civilians in this conflict. We will take all possible measures to protect our nationals and Canadian diplomatic missions throughout the regime." So, wow, Carney's coming out in support of President Trump and in support of this mission. And on top of that, Pierre Poilievre also came out echoing that and supporting what President Trump did. Here's what Pierre Poilievre had to say on X. "The death of Ayatollah Khamenei brings justice for the Iranian people after decades of rule under this repressive, theocratic, tyrannical dictatorship. This evil man murdered his own people, denied them their basic freedoms, and fueled terror and violence around the world." Absolutely correct. Canada will always stand with the people of Iran as they seek a future defined by democracy, freedom, and peace. Is one of those interesting issues where the Liberals and the Conservatives seem to agree and the parties on the outside disagree. So you had Maxime Bernier of the People's Party coming out really in opposition to this and criticizing Trump. So here's what Maxime Bernier had to say on X. He said, "Trump is launching another reckless war to instigate a regime change. He used to understand that such military interventions more often than not have disastrous consequences for both the population of the targeted country and for Americans, and to announce the warmongers in both Republican and Democratic parties." That's true. Trump did come in as a sort of anti-war candidate. I would say this is totally different than what's happened with, Afghanistan and Iraq. We're not talking about boots on the ground situation. We're not talking about active regime change. We're talking about bombing the bad guys, killing the bad guys, and then leaving it to Iran to build their own government. So he's going on saying the neocon imperialists have hijacked his government, and they're putting out the same ridiculous propaganda to justify this war that George W. Bush did when he invaded Iraq in 2003. I cannot support the U.S. for once again bombing a country that possesses no threat to them. To disagree with Maxime Bernier on that. But interestingly, the NDP actually agree, and they put out a similar campaign. So here is Heather McPherson. She is running for leader of that party. She says, "Today's attack on Iran by the United States and Israel is a serious violation of international law." And she goes on to just say that we shouldn't We shouldn't take out the bad guys, even though they are very, very bad. Okay, it wasn't just these politicians that were opposing what was happening. What did we see? We saw those beautiful protests, celebrations from Persians, just like thanking Trump and saying this is wonderful, this is what we've always wanted. Well, we also saw the sort of same deranged activists, the pro-Palestinian crowd, come out in these ridiculous, pathetic, pro-regime, pro-terrorist rallies. They were much smaller than the ones that I showed you earlier, but they were chanting "Death to Trump," "Death to Bibi," "Death to United States," "Death to Israel." The same kind of crazy stuff that people in Iran under the Ayatollah used to chant, and so they brought that to Canada, right? This is a big problem with Canada's immigration system. It's like we used to bring in dissidents from all these countries, right? And so the people who were fleeing oppression in places like China and Iran and Russia would come to Canada. And then what happened over the past 10 years, really under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, is we started letting in a lot of the bad guys, right? Anyone who has been in Iran for more than like 5-10 years, I can pretty much guarantee that they are a dissident, that they were very, very anti-regime. And yet, in the last couple of years, we've seen more and more cases of pro-regime people coming to Toronto. Former PC MLA in Toronto, Goldie Gamaray, did a great job of exposing the fact that there are mullahs and that there were pro-regime sympathizers who were living good, cushy middle-class lives in Toronto. God only knows why they're here. Well, it's because Justin Trudeau let them in. And so we saw some of those people out, including, these people are Marxists and they're Islamists. And so the true, real reason why they don't want to see the Iranian regime fall is because that's their ideology. That's what they want. That's what they want for us in Canada. That's what they want all over the world. That's what they're pushing. They want this combination of Marxism and hardline Islam to be implemented. And so they're sad. I mean, there's no other way to put it. There's no other reason why you would go out and do this. Truly, truly outrageous. I think what takes the cake, though, is some of the legacy media coverage that we saw. Really unbelievable stuff, mainly from the CBC. CBC is just so vile and so disgusting. Like, I saw this headline circulating on X, guys, and I actually thought it was fake. I said, there's no way that the CBC actually did this. I was wrong. It's still on their website right now. You can click on the link and you can see Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, dead at 86, ending his iron grip on Iran. The supreme leader killed on Saturday, Iranian state media announced, in an Israeli-U.S. airstrike. And look at this picture. Look at this unbelievable picture. Iranians react as they gather in this square in Iran after a supreme leader was killed by Israeli strikes. And what did? They found two women that look like right out of the Stone Age here, right? Compared to those like young, vibrant, beautiful women dancing around in Western cities celebrating, they found these villagers who are apparently crying over a picture. I mean, you have to look pretty hard to find a picture of people who, obviously they're so propagandized, or maybe they're part of the families of the regime. I don't know. But like, to find this picture and to run with it as if people in Iran are really, really, truly just like sad and like, I mean, it's insane. It's insane. And I think the cherry on top was that with some degree of certainty, it's been determined this picture is actually generated by AI. So it's not even real. It's AI. It's AI. The CBC is just pushing pure propaganda on this one. There's a really unbelievable CBC clip here posted by CBC Watcher, which is a great account you guys have to follow on X. It says 40 days of mourning have now been declared at the CBC. This actually pains me to show you this video because this is Natasha Fattah, daughter of one of the great Canadian activists, Tariq Fattah, who sadly passed away a few years ago. The late Tariq Fattah spent his entire life exposing radical Islam and showing the Canadian public just how dangerous this iteration of Islam is. That was what he spent his life's work. He was a colleague of mine at the Toronto Sun, truly one of the great voices arguing and pointing out the extremes of Islam in Canada and exposing it. And yet here is his daughter. Watch, she's almost in tears reporting this. And then she throws to a clip, again, of just showing Iranian propaganda on Canadian Airways. Unbelievable, unbelievable. This is what we get from our state broadcaster. Let's play that clip.
Iran is responding with force today to U.S. and Israeli airstrikes that have killed its supreme leader. At least 9 people are dead after a missile strike on a city in central Israel. Iran has also fired missiles and drones into neighboring Gulf states, killing at least 4 people and damaging a port, various hotels, and airports right across the region. Confirmation of the Ayatollah's death by Iranian state media brought tens of thousands of people out on the streets in protest. 40 days of mourning have now been declared across Iran, and an interim leadership council has been put in place.
And it wasn't just Natasha Fatah on the CBC. The CBC routinely, like over and over again, had this guy on a London School of Economics professor and political science expert, a regime apologist. I couldn't believe this guy was getting airway. Given how most Iranians feel, most Persians feel about this, they found this guy who's like willing to like parrot the regime talking points. Just really, truly unbelievable. Let's play that clip.
This is not about destroying the Iranian nuclear program. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister have made it very clear. This is about regime change in Iran. They do not just want to destroy Iran's nuclear program and ballistic missiles and the security infrastructure. They want to destroy the regime itself.
And it wasn't just the CBC. The New York Times is also just as guilty of this. Look at their headline. Ayatollah Khamenei, hardline cleric who made Iran a regional power, dies at 86. He made Iran a regional power. Guys, okay? The CBC writes about him. They did the same thing when the ISIS leader died. They call him an astute scholar, right? This New York Times is just truly, truly deranged. Many people mocking for good reason. This is sort of like the equivalent. Tim Urban, who's a philosopher, great writer, writes, Adolf Hitler, a hardline nationalist who rebuilt Germany into a European powerhouse, dies at 56. Same kind of vibe, same kind of idea here, celebrating Khamenei as anything other than a vicious dictator is really unbelievable. And there's more Canadian elements of this, right? This is hitting home. And to my point about how Justin Trudeau and the Liberals let in the worst Iranians on the planet, well, this is the outcome of it. So Salar Gholami, who is a Canadian cursor weight boxing champion, has a boxing gym in Toronto. Well, he woke up to 17 bullet holes in his gym because he speaks out against the regime. You can see he's wearing a Shah t-shirt, so he's obviously a monarchist from Iran. But still, unbelievable that this stuff is happening in our own backyard. Let's play the clip. And it wasn't just him. Golde Gamaré, who, like I said, is a former MLA in Doug Ford's PC party. She's an outspoken activist. She's really, truly fantastic. One of the best voices on this issue. And this is what she says, breaking. I just received a death threat by Islamic regime-linked hacker group Handala Hack Network from this email address. Death to Elisa bin Bon and Golde Gamaré. They basically just say, we are the Handala Hack team, loyal followers of the supreme leader, and we declare war on all enemies of Islam in the West. Our partners, the CJNG cartel in America and Canada, interesting because that is the cartel that they tried to take out in Puerto Vallarta last week that we covered on the show, the Jalisco Network. And we reported here at Juno News that they have people in Canada. Well, apparently these people are now targeting critics and enemies of Islam in Canada, and they have put a bounty of $250,000 on Goldie. Unbelievable. Stay safe, my friend, and look at this just really, truly despicable things that are happening in our country. Okay, folks, I really want to cover this one quickly here at the end of the show. Canada has handed control of Vancouver over to the Musqueam Indian Band. Really, just this story should be terrifying, especially to anyone out in British Columbia. The Liberal government is refusing to publicly release an agreement that they signed with the Musqueam Indian Band that recognizes Aboriginal title over vast areas of the Lower Mainland in British Columbia. Basically all of Vancouver, all of North Vancouver, all of West Vancouver, all of Richmond falls in this catchment, and the Liberal government is refusing to release the actual agreement that was signed, but it was buried in a seemingly mundane fisheries announcement put out on February 20th. The acknowledgement could radically undermine property rights in one of Canada's largest and most populated metropolitan regions. So on February 20th, Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada issued a news release with little fanfare titled Musqueam and Canada Sign Historic Agreements Recognizing Rights, Stewardship, and Fisheries. The news release reads, Canada recognizes that Musqueam has Aboriginal rights including title, within their traditional territory and establishes a framework for incremental implementation of rights and nation-to-nation relationship. The phrase including title refers to Aboriginal title. Remember, this comes after a judge issued large parts of Richmond, British Columbia, saying it actually belongs to the Musqueam, really undermining and kind of terminating the property rights of the people who own there, including commercial and private property. Really unbelievable stuff. And the fact that the government releases this, legacy media hasn't covered it at all. This is incredibly alarming. Okay, final story I want to cover really quickly. An independent MLA introduces a bill to abolish the BC Human Rights Tribunal. And this comes after, as we mentioned, Barry Newfield was fined $750,000 by this ridiculous kangaroo court for the crime of recognizing that there are only two sexes and two genders. So independent MLA Tara Armstrong has introduced a private member's bill to scrap British Columbia's entire human rights code and abolish the province's controversial human rights tribunal. So good on you, Tara Armstrong. I very much hope that people in British Columbia see the light and decide to get rid of these absolute ridiculous kangaroo courts that are really just meant to intimidate people for speaking the truth and bully people, just a total abuse of the state's power. Okay, folks, this is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow with all the news. I'm Candice Malcolm. This is Candice Malcolm Show News Update. Thank you and God bless.